So our topic for tonight is support your brain naturally, the cognitive health and the inflammation connection. So if you are feeling that you are forgetful, commonly losing focus during the day, and just sort of noticing a decline in your overall brain health as you are getting older, I hope this evening gives you some tips that you can start implementing today in order to support your brain for lifelong health. So these are a few points that we're going to go through tonight. First, we'll talk about some of the factors that contribute to a healthy brain and those that are associated with a decline in brain health. We'll take a look at the essential components of a healthy brain foundation that are needed for our middle and elder years. We'll take a look at the foods and lifestyle steps that we should incorporate in order to nourish our brains appropriately, in order to promote healthy cognition and mood. And of course, we'll take a look at some nutrients to support brain health and cognition as we get older. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I will address the questions at the end of the presentation. So I wanted to start with this quote, which I thought was very interesting. And this is from an American neurophysicist. And it says, your brain, every brain, is a work in progress. It is plastic. From the day we're born to the day we die, it continuously revises and remodels, improving or slowly declining as a function of how we use it. So we know our brain is really responsible for controlling many of our actions, our memory, how we breathe, how we move, regulating our overall body functions. But we know our brain is malleable and it can change. And this is what is referred to as that plastic term. It's not the material plastic. It's the idea that the brain can change depending on the internal and external events that we come in contact with on a daily basis. So this is very exciting because we have the opportunity to influence in a positive way, in a negative way as well, how our brain develops and how it ages as we get older. So a few facts about the brain. So it weighs about 3 pounds. It's made up of about 60% fat. This is very important because when we talk about good fats and the need for good fats, we know why. The majority of the brain is made up of fat, but it also contains some carbohydrates and proteins and other compounds as well. The brain uses about 20% of the oxygen and blood in the body. Under circumstances where we're thinking really hard, it actually uses up to 50% of fuel and oxygen. Our brains are not fully developed until about 25 years of age, and that definitely explains why, the teenage brain is different than the adult brain, because it's not fully developed at that point in our teenage years. And the final fact, our brains do become smaller at a rate of around 5% per decade after the age of 40. And this is where, individuals do start to see changes in their ability to focus and concentrate and remember details on a daily basis. And we'll talk about why that happens. So the brain contains a number of cells, nerve fibers, and blood vessels. There are actually about 100 billion cells in the brain. Most of these cells are known as neurons or nerve cells. And our neurons sort of act like on and off switches. So they're either in a resting mode or they're shooting electrical impulses down a wire called an axon. And this axon is very important. It's actually insulated with what's called a myelin sheath. And the health of the neuron and the axon is very important and is impacted as we get older and by a number of different factors that we'll talk about. And these nerve cells or neurons spit out chemicals known as neurotransmitters that trigger other neurons to act in a certain way. or other organs and glands to behave in a certain way. So you may have heard of some of these neurotransmitters before. So serotonin is a common one. This is a mood support neurotransmitter. It's responsible for balancing our mood, regulating our appetite, regulating our sleep at night. Dopamine, which is known as a pleasure neurotransmitter. So it's responsible for how enthusiastic we are and our awareness and our cognition. Other neurotransmitters that are produced in the body, epinephrine and norepinephrine, which are produced in our flight and fight responses when we encounter acute stress. And GABA are one of our calming neurotransmitters, very important, especially when we're in a state of chronic stress. Really helps to calm those neurons down found in the brain and the nervous system, helpful for balancing our mood and supporting relaxation. So these neurotransmitters are very important. And again, they are produced in different parts of the body and really help to regulate our mood and our brain health throughout life. Now, we know that the brain changes as we get older. What can happen? Well, our brains, as they were in our 20s, aren't the same when we're in our 40s and 50s and beyond. And, there's a variety of changes that take place. So you can see in this diagram on the right, red areas indicate areas of growth in the brain as we get older. That's starting from 7 years of age and advancing forward. The blue areas indicate areas where there's decline in brain function. So you can see that there's a variety of changes that take place as we get older. So generally we see there is loss in terms of brain volume or size. There's loss in those number of nerve cells or neurons. That protective layer in that axon that I talked about, unfortunately, can also be lost, and that's a process called demyelination. And that's connected to different neurodegenerative diseases. Different proteins can accumulate in the brain, such as plaques and tangles. These are markers for conditions such as Alzheimer's disease. The connections between our nerve cells can decline. So those areas where they are connected are called synapses, and unfortunately, there can be decreases in those connections taking place. Our neurotransmitter production can be disturbed, and there can also be impaired blood flow to the brain. So doesn't mean all of these things are happening as we get older. A few things can happen, really depends on, an individual's state of health, family history, etc. So, but these are things that we can anticipate may happen as we get older. So what we generally see, unfortunately, often due to age, is this deterioration in our cognitive function. So often when it's related to aging, this is sort of normal, where there is a decline in terms of how we can, process memories, either new memories or short-term memories. Our speed to process information and language can also decline, our ability to focus and that sort of thing. We see changes as a natural result of aging sometimes. There can also be cognitive decline due to secondary aging. So this is a rapid deterioration in the function of the brain because of pathology. So this can be due to a stroke, brain injury, or dementia, which is what we're going to focus on tonight. So oftentimes what we see is the initial stages of this deterioration in cognitive function is known as mild cognitive impairment, or MCI. This is sort of a transitional state where we can do everyday functions. We can still, dress ourselves, drive somewhere, cook, etc. But we do start to see a decline in, again, maybe our ability to remember details and that sort of thing. And under certain circumstances, that can lead to dementia, where this is more of a chronic or persistent disorder. of the mental processes caused by brain disease or injury. So basically what we see here, and we'll take a look at more specific signs and symptoms that take place, but there's, of course, concerns in terms of memory, there's personality changes that can take place, and impaired reasoning. There are actually 5 types of dementia, and Alzheimer's disease is actually the most common form. So just a few statistics about dementia. So worldwide, there are around 55 million people that have dementia. This, of course, a number is expected to rise. Of course, if we don't make any changes in our life, we know with increasing aging populations that there may be an increase in the number of dementia cases that we see. So by 2030, so in just about 7 years, we can anticipate about 78 million people being diagnosed, and by 2050, about 139 million people being diagnosed. Dementia is the 7th leading cause of death among all diseases. So, and it is one of the major causes of disability and dependency among older people globally. And, you know, we can see here with some of the signs and symptoms that can take place with dementia, it is really a brain disorder that is quite devastating for an individual and their loved ones. You know, brain disorders themselves really affect the core of the person. You know, essentially people are the same, but the way that they're behaving and what they're doing is, you know, there's a loss there. So there is the memory loss that can take place. You know, tasks that individuals would be familiar with become more difficult. There's poor judgment that can take place, just general disorientation in terms of where you are and the time. Also problems in terms of keeping track of things, changes in mood and behavior, challenges understanding visual and spatial information, and of course withdrawal from work or social activities. So big changes that can take place. And again, devastating for the person suffering with dementia and of course their caregivers as well. Why does this happen? So it's very easy for us to just say, oh, this is just part of the aging process and that's why this is happening. But we can go a little deeper than that and just saying, in terms of just saying it's just due to age. And this is, you know, really, I think, the meat of what we want to understand, because this kind of knowing the causes, and this is all part of naturopathic medicine as well, knowing the cause can really help us in terms of supporting a health condition. So some causes that have been identified when it comes to, you know, cognitive impairment and dementia include inflammation, mitochondrial dysfunction. So our mitochondria are known as our energy powerhouses. They are these structures in our cells that are responsible for producing ATP or energy. And unfortunately, as we get older and due to other factors as well, stress, poor diet, genetics, etc., our mitochondria can become impaired in terms of their function as we get older. And that is connected to different concerns such as cardiovascular concern and concerns with brain health. Digestive disorders. So we're going to talk a little bit about the gut-brain connection and how that connection is very important and can impact brain health. Nutritional deficiencies, also important here, are you know, our exposure to stress and sleep disturbances. Hormonal changes, so as we enter perimenopause and menopause and andropause, you know, loss of certain hormones and imbalances of certain hormones will impact brain health. Blood sugar imbalances, so we know that blood sugar dysregulation, is connected to brain concerns and Alzheimer's. Mood disorders and thyroid concerns also connected to changes in our brain, and polypharmacy. So as we get older, the individuals are taking medications and a mix of medications that can also change brain function and brain health. So Really, if you're finding and you're noticing changes in terms of your ability to focus and to remember things, I encourage you to kind of look at this list and say, kind of look at what factors may be impacting you in your life. And again, this is sort of the first step in being able to really knowing what kind of steps you need to take to support your brain health throughout life. So I do want to focus on one of those causes, and we'll touch on a few of the others as we go through some of the steps for supporting brain health throughout life. But we have scientists have noticed a link with inflammation and cognitive decline and a higher risk of cognitive impairment as we get older. And as the evidence continues to grow, it really is suggesting, as I mentioned in the previous slide, that inflammation is a cause for cognitive decline and the different types of dementia that we might see rather than a result of it. And one particular study that was published in Neurology in 2019 investigated brain health and inflammation in over 12,000 adults. And they found that the highest blood levels of inflammatory compounds at midlife actually led to the biggest drop in thinking and memory tests 20 years later. Okay. So this is the time, as soon as you can make the steps in terms of supporting your brain health and looking at ways to decrease inflammation in the body. So again, inflammation is known to cross the blood-brain barrier, causing neuroinflammation. This neuroinflammation can affect the brain, the spinal cord, the peripheral nervous system. It can cause overactivation of the neurons. And again, just to reiterate, it is being pointed as an important cause of dementia rather than the result of it. Causes of neuroinflammation. So probably stuff that you've heard before. And, we always drive home the point in terms of healthy eating and sleeping well and managing stress. And this certainly comes into play when it comes to brain health. So we know that unhealthy eating habits, eating a lot of sugar, processed foods, inflammatory fats, etc., will impact brain health. Not exercising enough will impact not getting enough sleep. Smoking, mental stress, even peripheral inflammation. So if you suffer from chronic joint pain or gut inflammation, that can play a role. Viral infections, autoimmune concerns, effects of elevated blood sugar could play a role, insulin resistance, mitochondrial dysfunction, I explained that already, oxidative stress, and our exposure to environmental factors such as pollution and heavy metals will also play a role here in terms of increasing our risk of inflammation in the body and in the brain. So that's a lot to deal with because we know we're encountering a lot of these things, especially if we're not paying attention to our health and not taking the steps to be healthy. So the big question really is, can we slow down aging cells in our brains? And can we control and offset the impact of inflammation in the body and in the brain? And the answer simply is yes, we do have the potential to do this. Research has shown that brain cells can regenerate, and it's important to support our neurons to prevent cognitive decline. And of course, taking steps to manage inflammation is really a key step in this process. So I wanted to discuss just 4 ways to support your brain throughout life. There are other strategies that we can take, definitely. But for our time together today, these are the 4 strategies that we are going to take a look at. So first is eat, hydrate, and move. The second is support cognition with nootropics. The third is improve your gut microbiota. And the last is manage stress and restore sleep. So let's start with the first step. So eat, hydrate, and move. So I've already mentioned, a diet that is not healthy will definitely increase inflammation and impact brain health. So you can see in this diagram here that I'm just going to actually minimize that, see if that's better. So we can see here, processed meats, refined sugars, simple carbohydrates will definitely increase inflammation and decrease insulin sensitivity, impact our blood sugar levels, increase our cholesterol levels, etc. So these are things that we want to avoid: a sedentary lifestyle and the typical Western diet that's high in sugar and processed foods. Okay. What we want to do instead is really focus on more of a Mediterranean based diet. There's lots of research supporting this in terms of, appropriate intake of more, fruits, veggies, whole grains, good quality protein, limited red meat and processed meats, fish, whole grains, all very important in terms of providing the nutrients that we need to support good brain health, to decrease inflammation, to support insulin function, and to increase something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is a factor that's involved in terms of supporting our neurons and actually having protection and a neuroprotective effect in the nervous system. So looking at our good fats, increasing omega-3s, which we'll talk about in a little bit, monounsaturated fatty acids. So olive oil is a really great example of that. Fish oil is very, very important. Antioxidants coming from our fruits and vegetables, all very key here. And then we'll talk about the benefits of exercise in a little bit. But this is sort of where we want to focus. Get rid of the junk from your diet as much as you can, and really increase those good foods. And often I suggest the 80-20 rule, where you follow this 80% of the time, try to eat really healthy 80% of the time, and just, allow that 20% for sometimes those foods that you wouldn't normally eat and may not be supportive. So here we see sort of foods to say yes to when it comes to brain health and foods to say no to. So definitely say yes to fish, especially our cold water fish like salmon, sardines, anchovies, etc. Wild sources where you can. These will provide omega-3 fatty acids, which are very important for the brain. Leafy greens, berries, avocados, nuts and seeds, spices like turmeric and saffron provide really important antioxidants that have been shown to support brain health. Dark chocolate, one of my favorites, in limited amounts. Tea and coffee and coconut oil, which supplies medium chain triglycerides, which is an important food source for the brain. Again, say no to artificial sweeteners, refined carbohydrates, trans fats, processed foods, and alcohol. I know there's some questions coming in and some people raising their hands. I am going to address the questions later on when I'm finished the presentation. Okay, so another important factor here is keeping your brain hydrated. So we know that water is essential for optimal brain function. About 75% of the brain is actually made up of water, and dehydration, even mild dehydration, can affect our mental performance. It can lead to inflammation, fatigue, dizziness, poor concentration, and reduced cognitive abilities. And we know as we get older, and even by the time we reach 80 years of age, we actually have 15% less water in the body than we did when we were 20. For individuals who are taking medications such as diuretics or laxatives as they get older, then that can also contribute to dehydration. So the general rule of thumb is to drink around 1.5 to 2 liters of water daily. You can also base your water intake on your weight. So take your body weight in pounds, divide it by 2, and that is the number of ounces that you should be drinking daily. you're not used to drinking water, I really suggest starting slowly. Maybe increase by a glass every 1 to 2 weeks, just to gradually allow your body to adjust to the increase in fluid intake. And if you're a big coffee drinker, coffee and alcohol are also diuretics. So, really take some time to, coffee's good, as I mentioned before, but just limited amounts, and make sure you're drinking water anytime you drink a cup of coffee. Exercise, we know, is very important for supporting memory and turning back the clock in terms of brain aging. And we know that lower fitness levels lead to faster deterioration of our nerve fibers and cells. And exercise is important, and regular exercise is very important. This is, key in terms of maintaining blood flow to the brain, to improving those factors that will support the growth of new nerve cells or neurons. Exercise has been shown to slow deterioration of the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that's responsible for learning and memory. Even exercise in midlife. So if you haven't exercised, depending on your age, if you haven't exercised up to this point, it's never too late to start. So even exercise in midlife has been associated with a 39% reduction in developing cognitive impairment. We see a 47% improvement in memory scores after 1 year for individuals who engage in regular physical activity versus those who just do stretching alone. And of course, exercise is very important in terms of decreasing inflammation, improving insulin function, and decreasing our risk of dementia and Alzheimer's. So very, very important. And when it comes to, creating an exercise program, it's very important to have a balance of aerobic activity, balance exercises, and stretching, all very important. And if you're new to exercising, then I always encourage individuals to work with a personal trainer, to have someone create a program for you that's suitable for you, and will guide you in terms of exercising correctly. So these are the Canadian 24-hour movement guidelines for adults 18 to 64. So they provide guidelines in terms of physical activity, sleep, and sedentary behavior. So the minimum is 150 minutes of exercise per week. We know if we go beyond that, that can be beneficial as well in terms of supporting longevity and our health span. And again, that combination of muscle strength exercises, aerobic activity, balance, and stretching, all very, very important. Really limiting, sitting down during the day and any other sedentary habits. So the next step that we'll talk about is supporting cognition with nootropics. So what are nootropics? So nootropics refer to actually medications and supplements that are kind of known as smart drugs. So they have been shown to activate our cognitive functions, so they can be helpful in terms of supporting our memory and learning. They help to improve our brain supply of glucose and oxygen. They help to reduce the impact of too little oxygen to the brain. They help protect the brain tissue from neurotoxicity, and they are useful in cases of memory impairment, mild cognitive disorders, and Alzheimer's disease. So some natural nootropic examples can include omega-3 fatty acids, curcumin, bacopa, rhodiola is one, ginkgo biloba, phosphatidylserine, and acetyl L-carnitine. Okay, so the one that I wanted to focus on tonight is omega-3 fatty acids. These are very, very important because our body cannot make omega-3s. And it's really important that we get omega-3s from our diet and or supplements. So omega-3s are a type of polyunsaturated fat. They're, again, very important that we get from food or supplement sources because our bodies cannot make them. And, they're very important from starting during pregnancy, throughout infancy, childhood, and into our adult years. The two most common types of omega-3s that we generally talk about are DHA and EPA. And the omega-3s play a very important role in terms of supporting our brain, our nerve, and our eyes. They're also helpful in terms of supporting triglyceride levels, and they have also been shown to decrease inflammation. So if you recall to one of the previous slides, when we talked about brain facts, I said that the brain is made of about 60% fat. And so this is why that's important. So with the brain being made of 60% fat, we know that this is an important nutrient that we need to ensure we have enough of. And actually, DHA specifically, that is, makes up 40% of that 60%. So DHA and EPA are both important for memory and cognition. We want to make sure we have an appropriate balance of omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. This is very important in terms of supporting inflammation in the body and making sure we don't, drive our EFA pathway to more inflammatory compounds. So most people unfortunately consume too much omega-6 compared to omega-3. So we want to make sure that we up those omega-3 fatty acids and decrease those omega-6 fatty acids. And when we don't have enough EFAs, and in particular don't have enough omega-3s, that can increase our risk of brain concerns such as Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease. And supplementing with omega-3s in Alzheimer's has been shown to improve mood, cooperation, appetite, sleep, the ability to navigate in the home, and short-term memory, and more. It's also been shown to support the hippocampus, again, that area of the brain that is responsible for learning and memory. So again, we want to consume more omega-3 fatty acids. What we want to aim for is an omega-3 to omega-6 ratio of about 1 to 4. It's estimated that in North America, the average ratio of intake of omega-3 to omega-6 is 1 to 20. So again, this is too high in terms of the amount of omega-6 fatty acids that we might be taking in. So we definitely want to look at decreasing those omega-6 fatty acids and increasing omega-3. Where can you get omega-3s? So cold water fish, as I mentioned, mackerel, sardines, anchovies, salmon. We can also get omega-3s from plant sources. So fish source isn't an option for you, then looking at plant sources such as walnuts, chia seeds, brown flax seeds, green leafy vegetables, all can play a role as well in terms of increasing your omega-3 intake. So we can also look at getting omega-3s from supplement form. There's a number of omega-3 fatty acid supplements available. So I encourage you to speak to your naturopathic doctor or your healthcare provider or the staff at Healthy Planet, and I'm sure they can direct you to a fish oil supplement or omega-3 supplement if you don't want anything that's fish-based. There are other supplements available that provide a combination of these nootropic factors or ingredients that I was talking about. So one example is Brilliant Mind from the Three Brains line. Each soft gel of this supplement provides omega-3 fatty acids, phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylserine, alpha GPC, and green tea extract. So this is an option to get those omega-3 fatty acids along with other nutrients that will support brain function. And another product to take a look at is Memory Boost. So this provides a combination of acetyl L-carnitine and acetylcysteine, alpha lipoic acid, ginkgo biloba, phosphatidylserine, vinpocetine, and huperzine A. Again, nice combination of those nootropics to support overall brain health. So again, I encourage you to speak to your naturopathic doctor or healthcare provider if you're looking at any supplements to support your brain health and cognition. So let's move on to step 3, which is improving your gut microbiota. So I'm sure you have heard that, you know, the brain and the gut are connected. This is true. There is a two-way communication that links the gut and the central nervous systems together. And so the brain can influence our intestinal activities. Like, you know, a great example is when you are, you know, stressed out. Sometimes that can affect your gut function. And the gut as well can influence your mood, your cognition, and your mental health. Okay. So we know that the microbiota, or that, you know, the good bacteria in the gut, is really essential for different brain processes, including myelination. So, you know, that protective lining around the axon, or the, you know, that wire that's part of the neuron. It's important for neurogenesis. The microbiota is also important for different psychological processes like mood and cognition. So we want to support our microbiota, okay? We know that there are different factors that can impact the health of the microbiota and influence, you know, the amount of good bacteria we have and have compared to bad bacteria, and creating a situation which is commonly called dysbiosis. This is something that we don't want happening. So our age, you know, what we eat, so those refined sugars and carbohydrates can negatively impact the microbiota. High amounts of stress, our lifestyle, our overall bowel health, you know, as we, you know, how we were fed as infants, if we were bottle fed or breastfed, can influence the microbiota. If we use a lot of antibiotics, that can impact the health of the microbiota. Our exposure to different infections can also impact, okay? So different factors to sort of take a look at. And I know if you're working with a naturopathic doctor, that these are, you know, sort of factors that they're taking a look at when they're looking at your gut health. And again, this is a big component when it comes to brain health. So changes in the gut microbiota and a situation of dysbiosis, so not having enough good bacteria, it's very simply how to explain that, has been associated with dementia. So gut dysbiosis can alter the protein expression. It can lead to protein deposition that we talked about in terms of being one of the causes of the, you know, changes in brain as we age. And it can also increase inflammation in the brain, okay? We also know that dysbiosis can influence our HPA axis, which is our hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, which is involved in stress. That can lead to high cortisol levels, and those high cortisol levels can also impact the lining of the gut. And again, just kind of influencing that inflammation process and the gut dysbiosis that takes place, okay? So we want to look at rebalancing the microbiota. We can do this in a variety of ways. Of course, our diet, reducing those, you know, refined sugars and carbohydrates and alcohol intake and all of those kind of things that would negatively impact the microbiota. And we want to use things like prebiotics and probiotics to help in terms of rebalancing the microbiota. So prebiotics are known as non-digestible plant components that feed the gut bacteria. So this can include things like onions, garlic, bananas, artichokes. These are examples of prebiotics. Probiotics are the actual microorganisms that have beneficial effects in the body. So, you know, some are good, some are bad, but, you know, when it comes to good bacteria and probiotics, we're looking at the good ones and how they can benefit the overall health of the gut. So some examples of probiotic foods that we can take a look at. So some fermented foods, so things like yogurt, kimchi, miso, sauerkraut, these are all important examples. But we can also look at taking a probiotic supplement. So there are, again, are many probiotic supplements available. I encourage you to speak to your naturopathic doctor or the staff at Healthy Planet to help guide you, direct you to an appropriate probiotic supplement that's great for you. This is one example. This is the gut brain strain from the Three Brains line. It's one of the most researched probiotics available. It provides one probiotic strain known as BB536, Bifidobacterium magnum, which has been shown to support overall gut health. Okay, this probiotic does not require refrigeration. It's great for daily use and traveling and suitable for vegetarians and vegans. So you can find probiotics in different potencies, 5 and 10 billion being the lowest, up to 50 billion and 100 billion. How much you need really depends on your health circumstances. So again, I encourage you to just speak to someone that knows your health history to determine which probiotic supplement would be best for you. And another supplement to look at is the Daily Brain Kit from the Three Brains line. So this is actually a packet supplement. So there are 30 packets in the box, and each packet provides 5 supplements. And it's a really nice approach to provide those key nutrients that we need to support brain health and gut health. So each packet will provide phosphatidylserine, curcumin, an omega-3 fatty acid, grapeseed extract, and a probiotic supplement. So this is a nice way to kind of get all those key nutrients, the probiotics, the nootropics, antioxidants as well to support overall brain health as we get older. So really nice supplement to support the gut, to support cognitive health and help prevent age-related memory loss. And the general recommendation is to take 1 packet per day. Okay, and the last step that we'll take a look at is managing stress and improving sleep. So we know stress impacts many areas of the body. Medical research suggests that 90% of all illness and disease is stress related. So we know stress can increase cortisol levels. It can deplete serotonin, that's that neurotransmitter that's important for regulating mood and appetite and sleep and sex drive. We know stress can increase our blood sugar levels and increase insulin levels, which is connected to concerns related to, declines in cognitive health. Stress can inhibit our melatonin levels, which we know melatonin is very important in terms of regulating our sleep each night. So when we inhibit melatonin, that will impact our sleep quality. And stress will have other negative impact in the body. Unfortunately, will decrease progesterone, interfere with thyroid function, lower testosterone levels. So here we have, impact hormonally in the body, and it will encourage also, a desire for fatty foods and carbohydrates, those foods that we want to avoid when it comes to supporting brain health. About 45% of the world's population is actually affected by sleep problems. This is really big. This is a very high percentage. And we know that even just 1 night of restricted sleep, and studies have shown, restricted sleep to 4 hours can actually increase cortisol levels to 37% higher levels the next day. So that's just after 1 night of restricted sleep. Again, those high cortisol levels can impact melatonin production. That can lead to shorter sleep. It can impact our ability to fall asleep in the evening and stay asleep during the night. And that can increase our risk of developing dementia later in life. So very important to get quality of sleep. Again, we know that that impact of sleep will impact overall brain volume. It will impact the hippocampus. It will increase those proteins accumulating in the brain. It will also, not having great sleep will impact our ability to clear toxins from the brain. So when we sleep at night, we go through different stages of sleep. And during our deepest sleep stage, this is when One particular system known as the glymphatic system plays a role in terms of clearing out the toxins from the brain. And if we're not getting that deep sleep every night, then we're missing that step of brain clearance taking place. And that, of course, when we're not clearing out the brain, can increase our risk of neurodegenerative diseases. So we want to get great sleep. We want to be able to manage our stress levels appropriately. How can we do that? So eating clean, staying hydrated. So those points that I made previously when we talked about, eat, hydrate, and move, a very important. Regular physical activity, relaxation exercises, practicing laughter, gratitude, all very important. We can lower stress by connecting with nature. So, well, this is my favorite time of year. So getting out there and enjoying the fall weather is very important. Getting into the forest, going for a walk or a hike, looking at the leaves changing color, always really nice. And then also looking at supporting your sleep habits. So developing a sleep routine that you can follow that will allow you to have regular sleep. So if you drink coffee before bed, stop that. That's an inhibitor of sleep. Try to get to bed at the same time every night. This is important in terms of establishing a sleep rhythm. I generally recommend not to eat at least 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. But if you are hungry, then focus on a snack that is a little bit more protein based. So maybe rice cake with nut butter or hard boiled egg, Greek yogurt with nuts. That's some good options. And then create a relaxed sleep environment. So make sure that your room is totally dark, it's a cool temperature, and that there are minimum noise disruptions. And then we can really support the body when it is dealing with stress with different nutrients. So nutrients such as our B vitamins, magnesium, omega-3 fatty acids, our probiotics, because don't forget, our probiotics are important in terms of supporting the gut and brain health. And then looking at different, you can look at different nervine and adaptogenic herbs. So things like chamomile, great, hops, valerian, these are really nice herbs to use. But again, speak to your naturopathic doctor before starting any supplements. Okay, so those are 4 simple steps that you can consider if you're looking at ways to support your brain health as you get older. So the first one that we talked about was eat, hydrate, and move. Enhance your cognition with nootropics. Improve your gut microbiota with pre and probiotics. And managing your stress and getting restorative sleep. And the last important point, which I did mention when it came to stress management, is the attitude of gratitude. And there's actually studies examining this and really linking an attitude of gratitude with better health, sounder sleep, less anxiety and depression, higher long-term satisfaction with life, and it is positively associated with better cognitive function. So sometimes, we have good days and sometimes we have bad days. Sometimes it's hard to really identify what we can be grateful for, but there's always something. So I encourage you to take, even 5 minutes every day to make a list, or, you can write it down or even do it mentally. Identify what you're grateful for in your life. And this is very important in terms of also supporting the brain health and overall longevity. So I just wanted to say a few words about supplements because I know there's a number available on the shelf, and I'm sure people take different ones, and definitely take ones that are suitable for you and that have been recommended for you based on your own health history. But just always encourage individuals to look at the quality of the supplement that they are taking. So I just wanted to point out the certification done by Ishura. So Ishura is actually a for-profit Canadian organization. They do third-party testing. They test for over 800 different contaminants, pesticides, different solvents, heavy metals, really to help confirm a product's potency, safety, integrity, and label claims. So any product that you see has this iSura seal of approval. Those products are guaranteed to be non-GMO compliant. They are contaminant free, they are adulterant free, authenticated, and accurately labeled. So this is very important, especially as we encounter products that they have things in them that we don't want to supplement with. Then looking for products that have iSura is a great step in terms of choosing quality supplements. So if you want to learn more about iSura, I encourage you to go to isura.ca. So that concludes my presentation for this evening. If you do have any questions, please reach out to the Assured Natural customer service at the number provided or the email provided, and they would be happy to help you. And I just want to thank you for attending this evening. I hope this information was helpful for you.